What's up guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg with a maxed out configuration of Apple's most powerful laptop, the 2017 MacBook Pro 15-inch. So the big news for this year is new Kaby Lake CPUs along with new graphics in addition to faster SSDs. Otherwise, the design and overall configuration is carried over from the previous generation. So the base configuration starts off at $23.99. That gets you a Core i7 clocked at 2.8 GHz, 16 gigs of RAM, a 256 gig SSD, along with the Radeon Pro 555 GPU with 2 gigs of memory. But in my case, I max out the CPU to 3.1 GHz, and that gets me a Radeon Pro 560 GPU with 4 gigs of memory and a 512 gig SSD. Now you can max out the SSD to 2 terabytes, but I really didn't want to spend $1,200 for that. So once again, the 15-inch MacBook Pro is the only MacBook that offers quad-core CPUs and discrete graphics. Everything else only offers integrated graphics and dual-core CPUs. Unfortunately for many, this still has 16 gigs of RAM standard, and it's still DDR3 instead of DDR4. Inside the box, we get a 2-meter USB-C charging cable. In terms of paperwork, pretty basic. We have a quick start guide, regulatory and warranty info, and a set of white Apple stickers. Below that is the 87-watt USB-C wall charger. This is the largest one you can get on the MacBook. So returning once again is that stunning 15.4-inch LED backlit IPS display with a resolution of 2880 by 1800. That's good for 220 pixels per inch. So once again, that's a very bright, sharp, and color accurate display. It also has a very effective anti-reflective coating, which seems to have been improved with the newer generation. Also built into the top of the display is a pretty familiar 720p FaceTime HD camera. The keyboard and enormous trackpad again are carried over here. So the trackpad does feature that force touch technology, so it doesn't have a physical or mechanical mechanism in here. It very precisely replicates a physical click via a taptic engine. I really like this trackpad. Even though it's extremely large, it seems to have good palm rejection. So even though you're probably going to lean against it while typing, it's able to distinguish between a fingertip and a palm. The keyboard is once again the second generation butterfly mechanism, which I personally really like. Some people complain that it's a little noisy, and of course not everybody's a fan of the shallow keyboard, but personally I like how fast this style of keyboard is, and with the second generation butterfly mechanism it's much more precise and tactile. Each key is also individually backlit with an LED light, and there's a slight tweak here to the icons on the control and option keys. Also returning once again is the touch bar. So again, this is a feature that is somewhat controversial, but otherwise it's a really neat OLED display covered in glass that provides contextually aware controls for whatever is on your screen. And I think they've done a good job making sense of the touch bar, but again, this is something I don't really need or look at. But of course, you can't go wrong with the Touch ID sensor built into the power button for unlocking the computer or just making payments or logging into your passwords. On either side of the keyboard are these very prominent speaker grills, so we have excellent front-facing stereo speakers, so let's go and take a listen to them. What's up guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg, and today we're taking a look at the brand new iPad Pro. So we have the 10.5-inch and the 12.9-inch. In terms of the ventilation, you'll find an exhaust vent built into the hinge, which draws in air from the underside edge. So you'll find those little gaps along each side. That's a similar design we see with the 13-inch MacBook Pro with Touch Bar and the previous generation of MacBook Pros. Also returning is one of the more controversial aspects of this design, which is Thunderbolt 3 ports only, besides the headphone jack. So we have 4 of those, 2 on either side, and once again, they're extremely high speed at 40 gigs per second, and they're symmetrical. So you get the same speed on both the left and right side. The 13-inch has reduced speed along the right side. So this does mean you will need adapters for this computer to use other accessories such as SD cards or USB Type-A connectors, like the charging cable that comes with the iPhone. But you do get some pretty incredible flexibility and performance with these ports. You can drive up to 2 5K displays at the same time in addition to the onboard display, or 4 4K displays. Pretty impressive. Battery life is estimated at around 10 hours of general usage, and that's with a fairly large 76 watt-hour lithium polymer battery. The only thing to be aware of with a computer this powerful is that you can really quickly zap through that battery life in just a couple of hours, depending on the application you're using. And this computer does like to spin up the fans to keep the processors cool so it doesn't lose any performance. So like the previous generation, we do have integrated graphics in addition to discrete graphics. So the integrated graphics is the Intel HD Graphics 630. That's the same on all 15-inch MacBook Pros. But in the case of the upgraded model, again, I have the Radeon Pro 560 GPU with 4 gigs of GDDR5 memory. That's actually the same setup in the 21.5-inch 4K iMac I recently reviewed. Now, comparing graphics to the similarly maxed out spec from last year, we're seeing a pretty healthy gain here. So again, we go from the AMD Radeon Pro 460 to the 560. So the OpenGL score goes from about 73 frames per second to about 87 frames per second. That's a pretty healthy gain. When it comes to Geekbench, in addition to Kaby Lake CPUs, we also go from 2.9 GHz to 3.1 GHz, and we're seeing pretty significant single-core gains in addition to much more significant multi-core gains. So this is a much more powerful computer than it was before. SSDs are also much faster. The write speed is around 2000, the read speed is around 2500 versus the 1800 for both on the previous design. Now personally, I really like this computer, but for the most part I recommend this to people who need pro applications such as video editing, photo editing, music creation, or something like that. Otherwise, I think it's a little too big for most people. It weighs about 4 pounds and has a fairly big footprint, especially on your lap. So unless you intend to use this primarily on a desk or use this for pro applications, this is probably overkill for most people. So as far as spec bumps go, this is a fairly significant one, but there's no reason to trade your late 2016 model for this version. But I think like many, if you were just holding off for the Kaby Lake update, I think now is a good time to pick one of these up. The only other update I would like to see is 32 gigs of DDR4 RAM, but otherwise I think it's in good shape. Alrighty guys, hope you enjoyed this look at the most powerful MacBook available. If you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up to let me know, and I'll see you again in my next video.